Hey guys, welcome back to PacTalk. I'm here today with you guys. I'm Pete Vodden, and it's just me and you guys today. We're just going to have a chat. The reason I want to do this podcast today is I feel like we're at a really important and interesting point in the fitness industry and in our fitness lives in general. I was recently at the CrossFit Games. Obviously, there was a tragedy at the Games, which I'm not going to talk about. This isn't what this podcast is about. But it kind of highlighted something that I think a lot of us have been feeling for a while to do with fitness, and just in a more general sense of the way things have been going in the last kind of 10 years with fitness, and what needs to change and what I think is going to change in the next few years. There's been a growing consciousness around what's healthy and what's not, and what's good for our hormones and what's not, for both men and women, as we age. And I want to give this whole thing some historical context. I want to talk about the kind of the evolution of fitness. Again, I've talked about this on podcasts before, but I want to talk more specifically about kind of where I think we're at now in relation to where we've been, and just have a chat with you guys about it. I think some of you will find this interesting. I hope you guys find it interesting. um, and yeah, I find myself at kind of an interesting point. I'm 46 years old. I think I'm 46. Yeah, I'm not quite 47 yet, but I'll be 47 on my next birthday. And I'm at an interesting point in my life, just as a human being who's been in fitness for a very long time, since I was 15 years old. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing it in different ways for a long time. I've experimented a lot. I've learned a lot, and I've tried to pass on that experience and that knowledge to you guys, and to my gyms, and to my programming, and so forth. And yeah, I just want to kind of like sum it all up, and maybe explain to you guys a little bit about why I do it the way that I do it, and again, why we've built the gyms the way that we've built them, and why I think no one's really cracked the code of fitness, but I think our gyms will help crack the code moving forward and provide you guys with what you need to stay, fit, healthy, hormonally balanced, and happy. Long term, you need to be happy. You need to be enjoying your fitness life. You need to be getting out of the gym what you want to get out of it. You need to be making progress. You need to be seeing results, and you need to be having a good time. So I want to tell you why we're doing it the way that we're doing it, and what that is. Define it, and then put it in some context for you, kind of historically. Um, you know, I I was born in 1978, and I kind of grew up. Mainly it was a kind of a bodybuilding influence in fitness. Obviously, this is before CrossFit. This was before HIIT training, kind of like all these high intensity boot camp things you see now. Most of the training back then when I was growing up, in kind of in the 90s, really, um, was of that kind of bodybuilding split type training, right? We had, you had your classic kind of, ever since Pumping Iron, which came out in the 70s, you had your kind of classic splits of, like, chest and biceps and back and triceps and legs. And, it was basically broken up like that. And then outside of that, you had, your cardiovascular work, which you might ride a bike or you might go for a jog or whatever it would be to kind of like elevate your heart rate up and do some kind of like steady state training. And the gyms were very much built around that, right? We had a lot of machines, a lot of bodybuilding machines, a lot of, like, obviously Nautilus was the original like big brand in the 70s who make great equipment for bodybuilders. And you know in the beginning there was barbell work and there was dumbbell work, and kind of as the 70s went into the 80s and the 80s into the early 90s, even the barbell work kind of fell out, and then it just really became about machines. So when you were doing your training, you were using machines a lot. You were doing a lot of isolation training. Like I said, you might also be doing some steady state cardio type work. And it was very kind of formulaic like that. You had specific days where you worked specific muscle groups, and then you had some general kind of cardiovascular work. And again, it wasn't elitist, but it wasn't popular. It wasn't like a lot of people were doing it. Some of us were doing it, and it was it was enjoyed by a lot of people, but I don't think it was really like in the mainstream consciousness like it is now. It's a different world now with social media and uh, the web, the interweb, and all the information that we get now. We've got so much exposure to different kinds of fitness, and so many sort of icons of fitness and influencers and all that jazz. It's easy to get inundated with types of fitness, but back then you had to look for it. You really had to look for it. If you were interested in bodybuilding, if you were interested in fitness, you had to go out and get magazines. Essentially, here you had a couple of documentaries like Pumping Iron, which were awesome, but you're not going to necessarily learn that much from that about how you should be training. So you had to kind of look for it, buy books, get magazines, read, and educate yourself that way. And like I said, a lot of us were basically training in the same way. There was only really one way to do it. And it was very effective. Personally, as a 15-year-old boy, when my testosterone was high and my growth hormone was high, and I was, working out every day, doing my different splits, I made a ton of gains in my early years doing it that way. And as you guys probably know, like I've talked about this on podcasts before, so if you do listen to the podcast a lot, then I apologize if this is repeating myself. But when I was 15, I invested in a weight set, barbells and dumbbells, and an old school kind of pec deck machine gym, which essentially back then you would go to a magazine called Argos, which was like a warehouse, and you would select weight training equipment from this warehouse, and you would go and you would pick it up, and you would put it, we put it in our rooms, in our bedrooms, and there were these, very dated, clunky, loud, not very smooth machines. God bless my parents for letting me have it, because I don't know how they ever put up with it. But yeah, I would do it in my bedroom every night, and it would be like a classic split, like I've been saying. And I would put like old Schwarzenegger movies on, or Van Damme movies, and work out, and it was awesome. And like I said, made a lot of gains, made a ton of gains. I was pretty developed as a 15, 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old. And, that was the way that it was done. And of course, I was also playing sports. I was playing football or soccer to you guys, and rugby, basketball, whatever came along, I was doing that too. So it was kind of injunction. So I had a degree of athleticism, let's say. I was never that athletic. I did do cross country as well. So I always had a pretty good engine, but nothing phenomenal. And it pretty much stayed that way for a long time, like all through college and so forth. We were basically doing bodybuilding type splits. There was some sport specific stuff, like if you were a rugby player, you were focusing, more on the strength and power side of things, and you were on the hypertrophy side. The hypertrophy bodybuilding side always did come into it, but it wasn't, pre the 2000, 2009, 2010, or I guess truthfully 2007 is when it all kind of started. No one was really doing cross training. There was obviously circuit training, and you would, you would combine lifts together to do a form of circuit training. Like you might go from a lat pull down to a push up to a bicep curl or something like that, and you might put it in sequence, and it might be done that way. Charles Poliquin had a great program called German Body Comp, which was essentially like that. It was like circuit training for resistance exercises, where you would put 3 exercises together and go from one to the other with tempo, which I still use today, and which if you follow that build program, you'll see it a lot. It's very effective and it's awesome. And it builds a lot of lean muscle tissue and helps you burn fat. So it's great. And yeah, that was kind of, the way it kind of went. And again, if you wanted to learn that stuff, you had to go out, you had to read about it, you had to buy books, you had to take courses, and you had to really seek it out. It was not easy to find. It was not given to you. You had to, dig deep to learn it. You had to dig deep in terms of the time it took to learn it, and in terms of the money to go on the courses and so forth. But everything changed around 2010, and it started to grow. And what happened, obviously, in that 2007 time was the evolution of CrossFit, and of Jim Jones, and of that kind of high intensity, if you're not training like a badass, you're nobody kind of mentality, right? It kind of became that more, the mind is primary training. It was all more about athleticism. It was about what you could do rather than what you look like. It was about, like I said, being a badass, like setting yourself challenges, trying to do things for time, And the great thing about that was it brought all these different modalities in. So suddenly there was a big emphasis on barbells again, and compound lifts, and deadlifts, and back squats, and Olympic lifts, and rowing, and running again. And it was like, all this stuff came back into the mainstream. I say mainstream, but it's always been, a smaller movement, but it was hugely influential on the industry. And it became a real thing. Like you would find even Globo gyms incorporating this kind of training into their gyms. They took some machines out, they put more functional equipment in. You'll see a lot of gyms now that have functional spaces in there. Even your kind of Equinox type space, I think they probably do have some kind of functional area, though I haven't been in an Equinox in a while. But yeah, it really started to enter into the mainstream gym, and also into the mainstream consciousness. People wanted to be able to do stuff. Gymnastics came back in. People were incorporating gymnastic stuff in their training. And I think people who are training now take that for granted that it exists. But it didn't exist pre-2007. In very small pockets, it may have existed, but it wasn't in the general consciousness. Like, no one was doing muscle ups in a gym in 2003, unless it was a gymnastics gym. Handstand work, handstand walks, kipping pull-ups, all that kind of stuff. It just didn't exist prior to the kind of birth and advent of CrossFit. And it was very powerful. It was exciting. It was kind of this underground culty kind of thing that, it felt cool. It felt like Fight Club. I've spoken to my friend John Kim about this, and we talk about, like, maybe it'll go back underground again, like, because it was like this kind of like earthy movement that was getting back to, like, let's move like animals again. Let's move functionally. Let's do stuff. Let's not just be too concerned about what we look like, and let's be more concerned about what we can do. And it was like, let your results be a consequence of your action, as opposed to a more of a vain pursuit of, like, I want to get this muscle bigger kind of thing. And like I said, it was an exciting time. A lot of us who were working in the fitness industry at the time, you kind of felt this kind of, this growth coming up. And for some people kind of dismissed it. It was like, this is nonsense. And some of us were like, we had our doubts, but I think, there was enough there to kind of entice you in and to make you curious. And I've always been a curious person about everything. So, it caught my curiosity. And, in the beginning, as you guys probably know, like, I was, more involved in the Jim Jones side of things. And then the CrossFit stuff kind of came a little bit after. But it was very, very powerful. I was doing a lot of boxing training prior to that. I was basically mixing up my boxing with my bodybuilding type stuff. And that was, very effective for me. Like, probably the fittest I've ever been when I was boxing a lot and bodybuilding a lot. And I was, I felt like I could handle myself. I was in great shape. I felt very fit. But CrossFit was something different, and Jim Jones was something different. It was combining, your lift with your high intensity cardiovascular effort with gymnastic work, and it was putting into sequences, and it was incredibly taxing on the body. And it really sent a lot of us kind of into shock. It really shocked the body into something new. And I remember going to my, my first Jim Jones seminar, and I think that was 2009. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And feeling very exposed. Like, I thought I was fit. Like I said, I mean, I was fit. I was doing a lot of boxing, doing a lot of weight training, but I was just fit in a different way. And you guys will know, if you've experimented with different sports, you can be very fit in one sport and then feel totally exposed by another sport. And that was me in that moment. I was like, holy shit, this is something completely different. My body's just not ready for this. It doesn't like this. And it hurt me in a good way. I was like, oh, fuck, this is something new that I can get my teeth into. So kind of that entered into my training and into a lot of people's training at that point. It was kind of this new pursuit that was exciting, with new stuff, new things to learn. Again, we take it a lot for granted now, but like stuff like double unders, handstand push-ups, handstand walks, no one was doing that stuff prior to the early 2000s. It just wasn't in the general consciousness. So, once it was in there, and once it kind of got a hold of it, you saw it just kind of infiltrating, many gyms and many people's, training. Of course, you had your bodybuilding purists who just stuck with that. And it wasn't for everybody, for sure. but it was definitely coming in, and there'd been obviously like other circuit training stuff, like, you had your Les Mills body pump type stuff, and you had your kind of like, kind of lower tier silly things like that. Not that it's a silly program, but you know what I mean. Um, but CrossFit really changed things. And for a long time, people went all in, and they were just like hammering themselves. Like, you have to be a badass. You have to like give it everything. It's, you have to beat my time. You have to beat my lift. You have to be able to snatch 200 pounds. You have to be able to do this. You have to be able to do that. And it was very addictive because, the learning is very addictive. Acquiring new skills is addictive. Hitting new PRs is addictive. Beating your best friend is very addictive. Winning is very addictive. Challenging yourself is very addictive. So it was very powerful. And I think a lot of people were seduced by it. I don't mean seduced in a bad way. I mean seduced in a good way, because it was very effective. It was very interesting. It caught the imagination. And, it was fun times. It really was, especially if you were kind of like, I think to be truthfully, I think it was fun for everybody, but especially if you were in your kind of 20s and 30s and you had a lot of energy and you were very kind of like, if you were very alpha in that all in mentality, you like to challenge, you like the competitive nature of things, then it really kind of like grabbed you. And like I said, a lot of us like threw ourselves into it. And I say us because I'm going to add a little caveat here. I've never been kind of like all in, because I've always done bodybuilding as well. I've always done other things, but the Jim Jones stuff and the CrossFit stuff has been in my programming for the last, I don't want to say how many years, but a long time. Yeah. So what happened was that came in, people got into it. You had gyms, Globo gyms kind of like not closing, but like getting less popular. It had the rise of the boxes, the smaller CrossFit boxes coming up. A lot of coaches going that direction, going more into the box direction. A lot of trainers opening their own gyms, their own boxes, because it was doable from a financial perspective, right? You could open a box. You didn't need to spend thousands and thousands and thousands on machines anymore, because all you needed was plates, barbells, rowers, and a rig. So suddenly it was like it was achievable for a coach to go and open a box. Now, terrible business model. A lot of people failed. A lot of people are still failing. That's another conversation. I'm just saying that that's what happened at the time. Like, a lot of coaches left the Globo gyms where they were working to open their own boxes, because suddenly it was attainable. It was something that was attainable. It was within their reach, and they could live out their passion. And a lot of people did that. A lot of people still do that, but not in the way that was happening then. Like 2010, 2011, 2012, this was happening a lot. And again, like I said, people went all in on it and got very addicted to it and had a lot of fun doing it, and amazing communities were built, and people had and have a lot of fun doing it. And, I think in the beginning it was very raw. CrossFit programming was very raw. It wasn't that smart in the beginning. It did get smarter over time. And I think the people doing it now, programming it now at the top level, are very, very smart, very intelligent people. And they brought a lot of great things into it. But I definitely noticed, and I still notice now, that over time, people get burnt out. And it's something we all need to be aware of, and we all need to be careful with. Our hormones are very important. Our hormonal balance is very important. We're all under a lot of stress. We all live busy lives. And if we constantly hammer ourselves every day in this pursuit of excellence, or pursuit of athleticism, or pursuit of beating the person next to us, or beating the person we were yesterday kind of thing, at a certain point, it can be damaging. Now, like I said, I'm saying this as someone who owns essentially a CrossFit gym and has CrossFit in his gyms. And I believe, and I love it, and I believe there's a massive place for it, and I believe it's awesome and it's great. But I do also want people to be aware that hammering yourself every day, day in, day out, is not the best way to go. And ultimately, if you don't pay attention to how you're feeling in your body, then it can become catabolic. You can get burnt out. You can start to feel like shit. you can start to get like a mental fatigue with it. Like, I just can't do this anymore. I just can't work. I can't push myself to that point every day endlessly. I've seen it time and time again, and I've seen it with younger and younger people, because people are starting younger and younger. They get to a point, and I've seen people in their mid-20s, like, I just can't train like that anymore. And it happened. I noticed it happening slowly over time, and I think a lot of us were very aware in the beginning. Like, I was always very conscious of like muscle, essentially. Like, I wanted to keep muscle on my body, and if I did too much, I would lose that muscle. And the problem was that it started out as just like, you would do CrossFit 1 hour a day, and then that 1 hour turned to 2 hours, and that 2 hours turned to 3 hours, because you had to learn all these different things. But then you have your full-time job, and then you have your family, and then it's just too much to try and cram in, and it became just too demanding on the body, on the consciousness, on your mental health. I think it affected people's mental health in a lot of ways, if it just became overwhelming and too much. So what I've seen in the last few years is people kind of like pulling back a little bit, and I mean that pulling back in a good way. Just starting to be like more aware of like, maybe I don't need to go all in every day and destroy myself, because if you're built a certain way, like I said, if you're kind of that alpha mentality, you want to push the pedal and you want to like go all in, and you want to win the day, and you feel like you haven't achieved anything if you're not completely destroyed by the end of a workout. And that kind of mentality over time leads to a lot of problems. So what we've seen in more recent times is smarter programming. We've seen, the kind of rise of more of a functional bodybuilding type thing, like Build is, and like other people have now brought into their gyms. So you don't have to necessarily, destroy yourself with a super hard CrossFit type workout every day. You can still, have parts of it in there. You can still scratch that itch, but you can still be focused on building strength, building muscle, and combining it together to be a more complete, more balanced weekly, monthly, yearly schedule. And I've seen it a lot. And I think, it's not a bad thing. But right now, I think we're at a point where the whole gun-ho attitude of like all or nothing every day is coming to an end, as people realize that it's not actually healthy to be like that. I think we've always, for a long time, we've talked about rest and recovery, but we've preached about it a lot without necessarily really practicing it in the right ways. Because no matter how many ice baths you take, and no matter how much you sleep, if you hammer yourself every day, you're still going to get burnt out. You're still going to get to the point where mentally and physically you say to yourself, I just can't do this anymore. And, like I said, I've seen that a lot in recent times. I've seen it with my friends. I've seen it with a lot of people I know. Some people surprise me in that they can maintain a higher threshold for longer. But, I think it's smart and it's wise, like I said, to have your days where you do pull back, where you do focus more on just building lean muscle tissue and building strength, and doing lower intensity work, lower intensity metcons, lower intensity cardiovascular work, and take out too much high intensity training that has a super high metabolic cost, is super fatiguing, super demanding, both mentally and physically, and ultimately leads to you having some kind of breakdown, whether that's physical, mental, whether it's an injury, whether, like I said, it's just kind of a psychological, like throwing your toys kind of deal. And yeah, but on the flip side of that, the problem is it's easy to get lazy, right? It's easy to be on the flip side of like, oh, so and so said this isn't good for you anymore, so I'm gonna go and do this because I think it's better and it's safer, and then you just end up being kind of weak, right? Because you still need that stuff that challenges you. You still need to test yourself. You still need to push yourself. You still need to learn new skills. That's what keeps it interesting. That's what keeps it vital. So I think what we're seeing is I in the people that are doing it in the right way, and the people that are doing it best, and the people that are getting the best results, they're combining these things, right? They're combining this consciousness. It's like, I want lean muscle on my body because I understand the metabolic benefits, but I still want to have that CrossFit stuff in there because it excites me. It's invigorating. It's fun. I love doing it. So I need that in there as well. I understand the benefits of lower intensity work and lower intensity cardiovascular work. So I'm going to bring that in, and I'm going to create my program around that new kind of more wholesome attitude, a more complete kind of aware attitude. And I think the best programmers and the best gyms are kind of going in that direction. Now, where I think we got it right as a club, and we opened Pharos Echo Park in 2017, is and I'm not saying this to like blow my own horn or anything like that, but I kind of saw this happening a while ago, and I was like, I've always been very like, you need both. You need the bodybuilding stuff because it's super smart and builds lean muscle tissue, which we need to stay metabolically healthy. And then you need the group environment, the high intensity stuff, to keep people excited and to invigorate people. And because it is also super effective if done in the right way. So we built it with that in mind, this kind of hybrid, and hybrid's become the word now, right? But we weren't the first, but we were one of those kind of like gyms that were very interested in the hybrid model of providing a facility where you would have choices. I can go to the open gym and I can do my kind of bodybuilding type workout. I can go to the cardio room and do a low intensity run. I can go to the build class, the RX class, the train class, and I can get my hit in. I can go to my repair class and start to recover. That kind of like more balanced approach to fitness is what we recognized back then and what we still recognize to this day. And then whenever we build or create a new facility, that's very much in our consciousness. We're not all in on one thing. We're trying to provide multiple things so that you as the individual can stay healthy, have options, get what you need when you need it, and provide a service that, like I said, keeps you hormonally healthy, mentally healthy, socially healthy, and will give you something to do every day that isn't necessarily going to war every day, which is what it was for a while for a lot of us. So, with the Echo Park facility, with the Idlewild facility, with the Palm Springs facility, with the Redondo facility, we're really trying to create a more well-rounded approach to fitness. And when we look at the programming and we look at like what's involved, we've been talking a lot recently about, where to pull back, where to scale, the options that we need to give, the space that we need to provide, the equipment that we need to provide. We're very conscious about bringing in the best from the bodybuilding world, bringing in the best from the CrossFit world, bringing in the best from the kind of lower intensity world of cardiovascular machines and so forth. And like I said, giving you guys options. Like, we're very conscious of where we source this stuff from. And then it's going to be very effective for you guys to get the results that you want. And, it allows us to program very effectively. It allows us to build out that kind of prescription, that fitness prescription. Like I always say, we consider ourselves to be like the custodians of your fitness. So we build out a fitness prescription for you. So, it might be X amount of days of this, X amount of days of that. What does your weekly, schedule look like? What does your monthly schedule look like? How do we build that out? And if we're going to do that, then obviously, like I said, you have to provide the space and the equipment to do that. And we're very careful about where we source things from so that we can create and build that and provide that. And, I think you're going to see a lot more of these kind of facilities moving forward, these more kind of hybrid facilities that aren't providing one thing, they're providing multiple things in a very kind of well curated way. And, the difference between something like a Pharos and something like, like a more of a Globo gym type gym, I don't want to mention any names, but like a more of a Globo gym, is going to be the coaching and the programming, right? It's not just going in and doing a high intensity class and just burning yourself out. when you go to a coached class that's been programmed very intelligently and in a very thought out way, you are joining kind of like a program. You are joining joining something that's been created, thought out, practiced, experimented with, and at this point is a proven successful program that isn't just about wrecking you every day, or isn't just about coming in and doing a bunch of stuff. It's a very progressive overload type program where you are growing, improving safely, effectively, and in a very kind of conscious way. And like I said, I think you're going to see more and more of these facilities, and the price point is going to be higher, right? Because you're having a better experience. You're paying essentially for personal training in a group environment. You're having that coached experience. You're getting that programming. And if you truly care about fitness, and you care about being safe, and you care about your health, then that is something you should be willing to invest in. There's a difference between our price point and like a 24-hour fitness or whatever you want to join. And there's a different gym for everybody, and I get that. But essentially, we want to provide the best possible service we can. And in order to do that, in order to provide you guys with the best equipment, the best space, the best coaching, the best programming, it comes at a cost, obviously. I always equate it to going to a good steak restaurant versus a fast food restaurant, right? If you go to a steak restaurant, a good steak restaurant, you're going to expect to pay a little bit more for that quality. And that's what we want to provide is quality. So right now, I feel like in the industry, we are at that interesting and very, I think, good point where we've experimented with a bunch of stuff. We've come out of that evolution of bodybuilding from the 70s. We've experimented with a lot of stuff in that time. We've moved into a kind of a high intensity kind of CrossFit modality kind of consciousness. I keep saying consciousness, I know, but you know what I'm saying. And then we're at this point now where everything is coming together, and we're just saying, look, maybe we shouldn't do too much of this. Maybe we shouldn't do too much of that, but maybe we can bring everything together, and maybe at a certain point it all makes sense. And I think, and I believe, like for me, and for what I've seen over the years and all my years in the industry, I think that balance is the right balance. That balance of building lean muscle tissue, building strength, having good mobility, and spending a lot of time in that kind of repair, yoga, stretching thing, which I need to do more of, and I'm aware of that. So I get it. And bringing in that lower intensity work, that lower intensity cardiovascular work for recovery, for heart health, and so forth. And then keeping that high intensity work and going for it when you need to go for it. So, whether it's once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, there are those sessions, and I talk about it all the time on my Instagram, where you have to test yourself and you have to push yourself. There are days when it is like, okay, it's game day. Today's the day. I'm going for it. And you have to have those days, I believe. I believe those days are important. I don't want to be the guy that's like, you don't have to work like that anymore. Just go in and do a bunch of crunches. You still have to test yourself. You still have to push yourself. And I find it gets the best results. It gets the most participation. We're a very high participation gym. We're not the kind of gym where, we want you to just be a member and not show up. We want you to show up every day, and most people do. So you have to have that. You have to have that balance. You have to have those options. And you have to allow people to express themselves how they want to express themselves, and not be kind of like, no, you have to do this every day, otherwise you're weak, kind of thing. Which I think sadly was the consciousness for a while. It's like either you my way or the highway, kind of like all in or nothing kind of vibe. And like I said, that's a sometimes thing and not an always thing. So here we are. This is where we are right now in the industry in 2024. We're at this point where all these things are kind of converging. And, unfortunately, I think a lot of businesses will ultimately go out if they're not prepared to, be more diverse and to include more things, or if they don't have the smarts to do it. If they're not passionate about it, if they're not truly passionate enough about fitness and about your health and about your hormones and what it means to live a long, healthy life. Like longevity's become a big word, a big watchword, right? Longevity's entered into our minds a lot more. We're thinking about, okay, I want to be around for a long time. I want to be healthy for a long time. I want my hormones to be healthy for a long time. How should I be behaving? How should I be training? And I think, like I said, we now have the benefit of all this experience of the last kind of, we're now like 40, 50 years of taking training seriously and all these different things coming in. And of course, you have to be aware of the financial benefits of some things, right? Some things become popular because there's a financial benefit to it, not necessarily because it's better for you, but someone's trying to make a buck. So you get all this stuff thrown at you. Now you need to do this. Now you need to do that. Not because it's better for you, because someone's making money off it, right? But that said, I do think, just from an experience point of view, the variation, the kind of sensible approach, the more broad-minded approach of including all of these things without excluding parts of it, is going to be your best bet. That learning and applying all these different forms of fitness into your week, combined with good solid nutrition, good solid sleep, good supplementation, and a healthy workout environment, not one that's destroying you, but one that's building you, is going to be what's best for most of us. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, guys. I know that this is just my opinion of what's been happening, what has happened, and where we're at. And this is something that I believe heavily in. We're building gyms with this in mind, this kind of hybrid consciousness in mind. Like I said, we want to provide the best facilities on earth for you guys to get the best experience possible. That's our goal. And we build and we program and we coach with that in mind. And I'd love to hear from you guys about what you think is right, what you think is best, what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, whether you believe in this hybrid kind of model, or whether you think, nah, I'm just going to do this, I'm all in on this kind of thing. No one's wrong. This is just opinion. Yeah, please, in the comments, say what you think. Hit me up. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'm saying this obviously now, building this new facility in Palm Springs, which honestly is going to be the best thing we've ever built, and I'm super excited for it. I think it's going to, really change the game. And obviously, when I'm thinking about what it's going to look like, how it's going to run, I'm kind of drawing on this experience, and this kind of knowledge and awareness that I've built up over time, and obviously having conversations, taking in input. So anything you guys can offer up is actually super helpful for me as I'm building this thing out, because like I said, it's for you. It's not just for me to go and train in, it's for you. So tell me what you want. Tell me what you like. Tell me what works for you. Tell me what's on your wish list, because, chances are, in some fashion, I can probably do it. So yeah, let me know. Thanks for tuning in. I hope that was somewhat interesting to some of you. It's super interesting to me, just from a, like I said, I've been in this industry for a long time, and I've seen a lot, I've experienced a lot. So it's nice for me to kind of take stock and kind of just think about where we're at, what we've learned, and where we go from here. Okay, guys, I'll see you next time. I hope you're all well, and yeah, I'll see you in one of the gyms. Obviously, Echo Park, 1316 Glendale Boulevard, Redondo Beach, 2101 Artesia Boulevard, Idlewild Gym. If you're in Idlewild, easy to find. It's not a big town. We're down on Saunders Meadow, right behind Alpaca. Awesome little gym. Kind of my home gym, because this is where we live. So you'll find me in there a lot. And then our new Palm Springs is going to be on North Indian Canyon. Like I said, that gym's 27,000 square feet. You can't miss it. We'll hopefully be open in October. We're shooting for October. And that's going to be a phenomenal space. So I really want you guys to check it out. Even if you don't live in Palm Springs, come for a weekend. Come hang out. It's going to be awesome. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time. Don't forget to click like on the YouTube channel and share if you can. It's super helpful for us as we try and grow this baby out. All right, guys. You take care. Bye.